Let's talk about ERP implementations, enterprise resource planning. I know, just hearing those words can make a business leader nervous. These are huge, high stakes projects that can totally transform a company, but they're also famous for, well, crashing and burning. But it really doesn't have to be that way. We're going to break down the exact framework that turns these risky ventures into massive wins. And, that nervousness is completely justified. Just look at this number. A full 2/3, 67%, of ERP projects either fail outright or just completely blow past their budget. We're talking 2 out of every 3 projects. It's like flipping a coin where you lose most of the time. So the real question is, how do you beat a rigged game? Okay, now let's flip that failure rate on its head. Picture this. A manufacturer in Kenya gets their $250,000 project done 2 weeks early. This wasn't a fluke. It was all because of a super precise 5-phase framework that's been tested and proven over 30 times. This right here, this is the answer to that scary 67% number. So let's unpack this thing. The best way to think about it is like a roadmap. It's your detailed guide for navigating what is, without a doubt, one of the trickiest projects any company will ever take on. So here's the whole journey at a glance. We're looking at a tightly structured 12-week sprint that's broken down into 5 very distinct phases. Each phase has a super clear purpose. The whole idea is to build momentum and, systematically stamp out risk at every single step. All right, these first 2 phases, the first 4 weeks, are everything. I mean it. This is where you literally draw the blueprint for the entire project. If you get this part wrong, you are basically setting yourself up for failure before you've even started. Phase 1 is all about discovery and alignment. First up, you map out every single stakeholder. Who has a say? Who actually uses the system day to day? Then you document exactly how the business runs right now. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And finally, you do a gap analysis. What does the software do out of the box, and what do you absolutely need it to do? And here's why that's so critical. In that project in Kenya, they found out the CFO's main goal for the new system was totally different from the operations managers. Completely at odds. Catching that in week 1, it saved them at least 3 weeks of incredibly expensive rework later on. Huge win. So once you've got the what's and the why nailed down from phase 1, phase 2 is all about the how. This is the solution design phase. We're making the big calls here, picking the exact technology, figuring out how it'll talk to your other systems, planning how to move all that old data, and of course, designing how to keep it all secure. And one of the biggest decisions you'll make is the core platform. Let's take the Microsoft world, for example. The choice is actually pretty straightforward. If you're a small or medium-sized business, you're almost certainly looking at Business Central. But if you're a big, complex enterprise, maybe in manufacturing, then you're going to need the heavy hitter, Finance and Operations, or F&O. Getting this right is absolutely foundational. Okay, blueprint's done. Now it's time for the build and test phases. This is where the rubber meets the road, where all those plans on paper start turning into a real working system that you can actually click on. And the key word here is disciplined. Let's be honest. Phase 3 development is where good projects go to die. And the number 1 killer? Scope creep. But survival is possible if you follow some non-negotiable rules. You have to work in short 2-week sprints, so there are no surprises. You absolutely have to follow the 80-20 rule. And most important of all, you enforce change management like your life depends on it. No nice-to-have idea gets to derail the whole project. Period. So what exactly is this 80-20 rule? It's really the core philosophy of this whole framework. The goal is to use the standard out-of-the-box features for 80% of what you need. You only allow 20% of the project to be custom code, and every single one of those customizations has to prove its worth with a clear return on investment. This is what keeps you on budget, and trust me, makes your life 1,000 times easier when it's time for an upgrade. All right, next up is phase 4, testing and training. And look, you can't just let the IT team test this thing in a bubble. The people who will actually use it every day have to get in there and try to break it. That's user acceptance testing. You also have to just hammer the system with performance tests and integration tests. And while all that's going on, you're training your staff so they feel ready and confident on day 1. And here's a real-world story to show you why this is so important. A critical report was taking 45 seconds to run. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but for a busy user, it's an eternity. Because this was caught during performance testing, the team optimized it. The result? It ran in just 3 seconds. That problem was solved before it ever became a headache for the business. So, we've built it, we've tested it, now it's the moment of truth. We've arrived at Phase 5, Go Live and Support. This is the big launch, the culmination of 11 weeks of really intense, focused work. A successful launch is not about flipping a switch and just hoping it all works. That's a recipe for absolute disaster. It demands a minute-by-minute cutover plan. It means having a war room on day one, with every key player in one place, ready to squash any issue instantly. And then it's followed by a 30-day period of intensive support called Hypercare. And you can see the results of Hypercare right here in the data. On one project, they had 47 support tickets in the first week. Now, that might sound like a lot, but because of that focused, intense support, that number just plummeted. By week 4, it was down to only 8. That's a system that's stabilizing fast, and it means users are getting comfortable. So, you did it. You followed the roadmap, you navigated to launch. So, what was it all for? What's the real payoff? And what are the key rules of the road you need to remember to make sure you get there? Well, the benefits are not some vague idea. They are massive, and you can measure them in dollars. Check out this data from Forrester. The biggest piece of the pie, over $360,000, is from making the sales team more efficient. But then you also see these huge savings from not needing expensive consultants and getting rid of old, clunky servers. It's real value across the entire business. So, when you add up all that value, what do you get? You get this: a 3-year return on investment of 265%. Let me say that another way. For every single dollar you put into this project, you get more than $2.50 back. Now that is a business case that's impossible to argue with. And you know what's even better? The payback period is just 6 months. The entire project pays for itself in half a year. After that, all those benefits we just talked about are pure profit for the company. This is what a successful ERP project looks like. Now, to get to that success, you have to know what to avoid. You need to be watching for these red flags. If your executive sponsor is a ghost and never shows up to key meetings, that's a huge problem. If your users are fighting you, saying just make it work like the old system, they are totally missing the point. Oh, and if your implementation partner ever says, yeah, we'll figure it out later when you bring up a real concern, run. That is a massive warning sign. So let's boil this all down to the absolute essentials. If you want to win, these are the strategic rules you have to live by. You have to guard your project's scope like a hawk. You have to clean up your data before you start. You need to focus more on getting people to actually use the new system than on adding one more shiny feature. And you have to build a network of internal champions, your super users, who can help their coworkers long after the consultants have gone home. And that brings us right back to where we started. The entire fate of a multi-million-dollar project is so often decided by the quality of the thinking and the work that happens in that very first month. So the real question you need to take back to your team, the one to think about tonight, is this: are you asking the right questions right now?